Bar Kamsa goes to this party, and he was not invited. It was a mistake. Kamsa was supposed to be invited, but this guy with the similar name, Bar Kamsa, shows up by mistake. The invitation went to the wrong address. The post office was just as bad then as it is now. Doesn't change much. Right? So the wrong guy shows up at the party. The party was held by Bar Kamsa's enemy, his mortal enemy. They hated each other. So the owner of the party, it's a long story, you can look it up. But the owner of the party threw him out and embarrassed him. Right? So Bar Kamsa said, "Oh, this is how the Jews treat me. I'm going to pay them back." Right, you follow? Now, how did he pay him back? He went to the Romans and said, "The Jews are rebelling against you." Right? So the Romans, and that's he bought. He said, "I'll prove it to you. I'll bring a korban, a sacrifice, and they won't accept it." So what did Bar Kamsa do? He defiled the korban to make it not acceptable, right? And the Romans didn't know, but the Jews knew, so they wouldn't. And that was their whole argument.
And they knew that he was the one who did it.
They knew who was the one who did it.
They knew that Bar Kamsa was the one that created the defect, because it was done in such a way that it was obvious.
Yes, right. It was a defect that the Romans did not consider a defect. The Romans had sacrifices too, but they did not consider this a defect. But for the Jew, for the Beis Hamikdash, it was a defect. But they knew what he was up to. You follow? Now think about it for a minute, right? So the Romans come and they destroyed Jerusalem, and what happened to Bar Kamsa?
He died too.
Maybe, but it certainly didn't go well for him. You think he's better off now? He's got family, you know. It's not going to go well for him. So why did he do it?
It sounds like craziness to me, because he's looking at it from the perspective of me versus them, but he's part of them. But then, right. It's very confusing. It's almost like he's in such a rage that like he can't see clearly anymore.
Yeah, you ever see anyone get divorced? I have a student I used to have a student who was a divorce lawyer. He said sometimes a guy will say to me, or woman will say to me, "I want you to, pursue this line of arguing, go down this path of suing them." And you'll say to them, "But you can't win." He said, I don't care. I want them to pay. It'll cost me more than what I'll get out of it. Do you understand? Right? You know what the Chazal called that?
Is that the jealous man, or the what was the other man? The lustful man.
Yeah, no. You know what they call it? That's not jealousy.
It's insanity.
So what do they call it?
I don't know. In this case, what would it be?
A grudge.
It's called Sinas Chinum. Right?
I'm sorry. Translate.
Sina means hatred. Chinum for free hatred. Causeless hatred is usually translated. So why did Chazal say Sina? Hatred. What's the difference in hatred and causeless hatred? Hatred's not the problem. It's Sinas Chinum that's the problem. You understand?
The basic hatred, is that like somebody just annoys you because the way they chew, or they just annoy you because, like, there's always a reason that you hate someone. I don't understand.
That's Sina. That's fine. Go ahead, enjoy yourself.
No, Sinas Chinum, I'm saying. Can you,
no,
when you say baseless,
someone does something that's annoying, that's Sina.
Okay. But what's the China?
That's exactly the question. What's Sina? Everybody talks about it, but they don't distinguish between Sina, hatred, and Sinas Chinum, causeless hatred. Why does Chazal say, no, it was caused by causeless hatred? What's the difference?
Exactly, yeah.
It's a big difference, a very important difference. You hate someone because they chew their gum. That's just Sina.
No,
right?
wait, Rabbi Baars, faithless means there's no cause. If you have a basis for something, that means there's a cause. So let's say somebody cuts you off all the time when you speak, or they cut you off in traffic, or let's say they trip you when you're walking or something. So then you can hate them with a reason, right? That's a reason, because they cut me off in traffic, right? Okay, but so faithless would be they didn't do anything to you. You just don't like the way they look, or the way they breathe, or the way they something, right?
No, that's doing something. That's Sinat. I don't like
they're not doing anything to you, but what's it to you if I'm breathing loudly or something like that? Like
I'm not saying it's a noble trait, but they said that the temple wasn't destroyed because of Sinat. I don't like the way that person looks. That's Sinat.
So what's faithless then? Could you explain it, please?
Exactly. What does it mean? Causeless hatred, Yvonne? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, you actually called it free hatred.
What's that?
You actually called it free hatred.
Free hatred, right.
Means
free.
Could you please define it then?
Right, that's what we're going to do.
Haven't you ever just met somebody and you just hated them on sight? Had nothing to do with anything, you just didn't like them, and nothing they could ever do or say or whatever was going to change that. You just flat didn't like them. The minute you laid eyes on them, you didn't like them.
Right.
You know what?
I would have, I mean, I have, so I know. And I felt bad about it, but there it was.
Yes.
You know what? But that could also have a cause. I'm sorry. That could be like a transference reaction, or it could be a projection. And it happened to me also that I really didn't like somebody because of the way they were looking and talking, and I attributed to them things that I didn't have proof for, but I was reading into things, and so I didn't like them and I didn't trust them. However, it turned out that they redeemed themselves in my eyes because they proved they were actually not what I thought they were. They were just probably acting that way because they were uncomfortable or insecure or whatever it was. So I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying, but I would suspect that Rabbi Baars would not say that's Chinum. That is just Sinat, because you have a reason, because they rub you the wrong way.
Yes, exactly. Like,
so then what's Chinum?
Growing up in England, right, we have a natural hatred for French people, understandably.
So what's Chinum? Could you please, Rabbi Baars, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight.
Oh dear,
if I do not understand, please tell me in a sentence, what does baseless hatred, what does it mean then? Because I thought I understood. I really don't, because you really
I understand. Most people use the term and they don't understand it. It's crazy to me that every Tisha B'Av we go through the same thing, and all the examples are not Sinas Chinum, and not all, but nearly all the examples are not Sinas Chinum.
What is? Can you give me an example of it? What's an example of it?
The Torah uses the term a few times. For example, the Jewish people, they complained in the desert because we remembered the fish that we ate in Egypt, chinam, for free.
Which wasn't
free.
It wasn't free. I'm with you on that one. But that's how they described it, right? So you see, why wasn't it free? So at least on one count, it's sort of like your husband comes home and he's holding a really fancy pen, gold inlaid, engraved. Oh, it really looks like lacquered, the whole thing. Wow, that's a real nice. Yeah, I got it free. It came with the Bentley.
Okay, so what's in it?
What's that? Let's say you say that? So you see, they said it was free. They were slaves. So if they gave them fish, they were slaves. The slaves in America got their lunch and dinner for free, whatever it was. It wasn't, because it wasn't free. They didn't pay for it. But it wasn't a great lunch and dinner. It came with free lunch. Right?
Okay, wasn't it also cucumbers?
Yeah, that was a different, but not because they were free. Here they said they remember the fish, it was free. Rashi comes along and says, even that they didn't get, they had to pay for it. But nevertheless, they described it as free. So free means that there is a cost and you're miscalculating it. You're really going to pay dearly for this, even though you think of it as free. If they were to, God forbid, have gone back and said, can we have our free fish if we'd be slaves? Right? At a mighty price to pay for free fish. Right? Now, it's not so strange. Right? People, who came from communist countries to America felt more free. Not totally, but some people did, and they went back to Russia because there you didn't have to think about anything. You have to think about the bills, you don't have to think about your taxes, your mortgage, or anything. They took care of everything for you. The medicine, right? So you're free of the problems. But free means you don't understand the price that you're paying.
Oh, so to apply that to Sinah, is the example of Kamsa bar Kamsa illustrative, yes or no, of Sinas Chinum?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Kamsa bar Kamsa is going. He hates the rabbis, so he's bringing this whole thing to destroy the Jewish people, right? He thinks he's going to get off. He thinks I'm paying them back, but he's paying a sore price for that Sinat. You see, you hate the guy because he's got a funny colored tie, or he's French, or whatever it is. Okay, you want to do something about it? You go do something about it. But you know what you're paying. You know it's going to hurt you, or maybe it will, maybe it won't, right? But this kind of hatred, you think you're going to be able to, I see this all the time in divorces. You see it all the time. People think they're going to get their ex back, right? They're going to, really shove it to them. And I just with a guy just recently, I said to him, all these little snipes you do at your ex-wife, right, are only going to be paid back to your children.
So, Rabbi Baars, when you say Sinas Chinum, then it seems to me, if I'm understanding you correctly, that what you're doing is you're saying Chinum applies. We see this with saying the fish was free in Egypt, and really it's not free. There's a price attached. Therefore, Sinas Chinum is a kind of hatred that a person has where they don't realize that the hatred actually is going to cost them dearly. And so, therefore, the example you're giving is divorce and contentiousness. And so, therefore, am I incorrect in believing and understanding from what you're saying, therefore, that Sinas Chinum is not a feeling, it's an action? So Kamsa bar Kamsa, he took an action. So it seems that Sinas Chinum actually is not just a feeling of hatred or annoyance, it's actually revenge.
That's right. That's a very good. It's not just revenge can be a different thing, but it's included. Revenge is part of that whole concept. Yeah. People have it with their spouses.
Okay, so Sinas Chinum is an action.
You're going to tick off your husband or your wife. You're not going to win. Right?
Okay, so Sinas Chinum then would be defined as an action one takes in response to a dislike for somebody, not realizing the negative repercussions they themselves will experience. And one example of Sinas Chinum is revenge.
Yes, right, exactly. Right.
Thank you very much.
You can have revenge without Sinas Chinum.
Yes.
Right.
What? Wait. You can have revenge without Sinas Chinum? Oh, you mean if you don't have any hatred for the person, you're just avenging justice, like Hashem Yimakom Damam.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
You can have that kind of revenge, and that's good. Like David the Melech said to Shlomo, pay these people back. You can have revenge without Sinas Chinum. But Sinas Chinum always has revenge in it. That's a very good point you're making, Yisrael. I really like that. Very good.
Okay, so Sinas Chinum, thank you. That always has revenge in it, you're saying. Sinas Chinum always has revenge in it.
Right, that's right. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
But also resentment, right? Because you may not necessarily do anything to them, but you're thinking, I hate this person. This person's awful. Right. And just think that negativity affects you and anybody that feels it.
Right, exactly. Right, you're ruining your life.
Mocking somebody is also Sinas Chinum.
What's that? Sorry.
Go ahead, Yisrael.
Oh, thank you. So another example of Sinas Chinum would be mocking somebody.
Not always. Not always.
So same thing with revenge. Revenge may or may not be. It could be. There could be holy revenge permissible by Torah without your own negias, or there could be a revenge characterized by Sinas Chinum. But with mockery, if somebody is annoying you, so like if someone chews too loudly, and you mock them and you chew loudly to show them how annoying it is, that is Sinas Chinum.
If it ruins if you come out suffering because of it.
Okay, but wait a second. Then you can only retroactively define something as Sinas Chinum, not proactively, because you don't know if it's going to harm you or not.
Well, if it's ruining your day, if you're going around, oh, I can't believe what he did, I can't believe what he did, I can't believe it. Well, you're ruining your day. So like, get over it, leave it alone, drop it, let it go. You're suffering because of it's how much it's costing you.
No, but that's your own recrimination. That's your own self-talk, which you could say it's Sinas Chinum if you're upset with yourself because you're actually a good person and you're not like a sociopath. But I'm saying so the pain and suffering that is more than you realize could be coming from your own reaction, and it also could be coming from someone else, like in the divorce with a spouse or something.
Right. People are ruining their own lives because of the hatred they have for other people. That's Sinas Chinum. The price you're paying is just not worth it.
Is there ever justified hatred?
Yes, lots of times. Nazis, Hamas.
I remember when my kids would say things like, "Oh, I hate so and so." I would say, "You don't hate them. You may not like them very much, but you don't hate them."
Yeah, well, generally speaking, we have emotions are defined either good or bad emotions. Love is a good emotion, hate is a bad emotion. But there are times where you're not supposed to love, and there are times where you're supposed to hate. So a good and bad is when the majority is generally speaking good. But every emotion requires judgment. There's no emotion that is 100% always good or 100% always bad. So, right, so Bar Kamsa, he's got real Sinas Chinum here. Right? He's shooting himself in the foot. He's going to destroy everything to get paid these people back. Bar Kamsa is engaging in Sinas Chinum, but so is Rav Avkalos. How is he engaging in Sinas Chinum? He's the rabbi who said, "Don't do anything."
Where?
In the story, they bring it. They bring.
Because
okay, it's off color.
Because he's saying that ultimately it's permissible to sacrifice a blemished animal on the altar. Right. So he's causing Sinas Chinum because they're going to refuse the sacrifice, and if they refuse the sacrifice, it's going to cause trouble with the Romans.
Right. So he's shooting himself in the foot as well, because you're not going to bring any corbans in a minute.
Right.
This is a terrible bind, Rabbi Baars. This is a terrible, terrible bind. How could you not have Sinas Chinum? Because whatever you decide and whatever you do, it's going to cause pain.
No, that's the whole point. If he didn't have Sinas Chinum, what would he have done?
No, Bar Kamsa, he brought the sacrifice to begin with at Sinas Chinum. But yes. But once he already did, that boat has left the dock.
Right.
He did it. At this point, whatever you do, however you decide, whether you accept it or you reject it, it's a problem.
No, because you see, you're defining it in those two options. You're not seeing the whole picture, and that's what they're getting stuck on, because they're being caught in Sinas Chinum. They hate this guy.
Right? So what's the third way?
The third way was if you understood why is Bar Kamsa doing this in the first place?
So then you would talk to him and you would tell him, "We understand you're so hurt," and they would validate him, and that would make it all better?
they would
He
have.
was trying to get revenge.
Because he felt embarrassed in front of everybody. But if they had said to him, you know, they point him Tzaddik of Jerusalem, they would have made some accommodations to his feelings and dealt with the situation appropriately, could have averted the whole disaster.
Yeah, but then Rabbi Zechariah ben Causeless would say, well, then people will say that, you know, when you put the nation in danger, we're going to elevate you.
Well, that's because they're caught in this binary thinking. That's all part of the concept of Sinas Chinum. That's what he get criticized for. He got caught up in, instead of looking at the whole situation.
Wait. I don't understand that, because it says on v'tanuto, right? It was his humility. It doesn't say it was his Sinat Chinum. It says it was his humility. Real humility is, I'm a person in leadership, and as such, I have this power and these abilities because God gave it to me, because I need to do something. I need to take responsibility for the nation. This is him not taking any responsibility.
That's right. You're right. Exactly. It's being cynical. His humility. So-called humility.
But wouldn't that be the equivalent of saying, okay, just, you know, go ahead and put the mum sacrifice on the altar and just, you know, burn it?
No, that wouldn't have solved the problem. He's going to find some way. He's not going to be deterred.
I get that, but they have a decision they have to make then, and then they have to look at it from the whole perspective of the whole nation, because it's not just Bar Kamsa.
That's true, right? The rabbis are bringing this story as a symbol of what the atmosphere that was in the Jewish people that unfortunately we have today. People are walking around very bitter about different things that happen to them by other people, and it's ruining their life. It's a epidemic level. You see, that's the whole thing with in America, the rich are making too much money, and there's the gender thing is also it's all coming from the same thing about resentments, and people are bitter. It's a plague in their minds of people. It's a terrible thing. People are ruining their own lives because of it.
So do basically, if I may, if I understand, if I'm getting it, basically the reason, so Sinas Chinum is when a person doesn't realize that their actions in response to hatred are ruining their life or causing them more pain than not. And if they were not, I think, could you see it as the following, that if they acknowledged that there is a God and they had real bitachon, that he is the prime cause, then they would not have any Sinas Chinum and end up hurting themselves, because, and that's one part to this, and the other part is that if they are negating the person, they're stuck, like you said, Rabbi, in this binary, and they don't see the third way, which is acknowledging the feelings of the other. When you don't acknowledge the feelings of the other person, that's when you actually end up hurting yourself. So, like the plague of Rabbi Akiva's students, they didn't treat each other properly. They thought, well, I love you so much that I want you to think my way, because my way is obviously the right way, and you're not thinking the right way. And I love you, and I want you to see the right way, just like because I'm right.
Rabbi Akiva's students was not seen as him, God forbid. That was not showing enough cover. That was a different thing entirely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then scratch that idea of the students.
You're right about the first right, Sinas Chinum was a lack of bitachon. If you see.
So when we talk about the Beis Hamikdash, the antidote to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is Ahavas Chinum, then basically we have to increase our bitachon and bring more Hashem into the world, and then realize that then we won't be hurting ourselves by the Sinas Chinum, right?
That's right. Right. I don't think the antidote is other Sinum. The antidote is B'tachon.
Right. Okay.
Very good. Very
and then
good.
also ignoring the feelings of somebody else. That seems to me also, so scratch the example of Rebbe Kiva's students then, but here with Kamsa, but the Kamsa Bar Kamsa example, if, as you had said, they did not get stuck in the binary and they could see that there was a third way of acknowledging the problem and validating the feelings, then they would not hurt themselves. So it seems also that when you talk about like v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, seeing the godliness in someone else, it's back to bitachon, to see the godliness in someone. When you recognize their feelings, then you only help yourself. If you deny someone else's feelings, then you're going to hurt yourself.
That's true too, 100%.
Because we're all connected, and in the Torah is right. Well, to quote your friend, I don't remember his name, the idea for a book. The Torah is full of examples of how validating we are of feelings, even with the nida of harchakas of nida, right? That we're so, and even with the way we give tzedakah, right? That it's the Gemara says that a smiling, showing someone the white of your teeth is greater than giving them a glass of milk. So the godless Adam, seeing the godliness in another person by acknowledging their feelings, seems to me another way of helping to be an antidote to this Sinas Chinum.
It could be 100%, but primarily the antidote to Sinas Chinum is realizing how much it's ruining your life.
Right.
As Johnny Cash said, the boy named Sue, right? He hated his father because he named him Sue, right? The resentment he had to his father was worse than anything his father did.
Right.
It's the resentment that we have to people that's killing us.
But Rabbi Baars,
yeah.
What? Sorry, were you saying something else?
No, you're right. It's the lack of bitachon. If we realize that everything that's happening to us is from the Almighty, then we wouldn't get upset with what other people do to us.
Right. But
because it's from God.
The example that you gave of Johnny Cash, I'm not familiar with that, but that raises the question. So let's say somebody does hurt someone in relationship, right? Or they're abusive or whatever the case may be. They're just a very toxic person. So then the question becomes, okay, you don't want to feel that resentment because that's Sinas Chinum, because it's hurting you. However, if you know this person is hurtful and you're still not on the madrega to have enough bitachon to realize it's from Hashem and, oh, thank you, Hashem, that they're so mean to me, then is it Sinas Chinum just to basically distance yourself from them and go no contact, because every time you interact with them, they are hurtful and it's painful.
We say in benching, better to suffer at the hands of God, better to suffer the hands of God than the hands of man. Right? So what's the example? You're driving your car and it gets hit by a deer. Do you feel bad against the deer? You resemble the deer? No. Right? You move on because it's the hands of God. The same exact experience, but it's a drunk driver. Right? Like my son, when he was about 14, he was on his scooter, got hit by a car. Right? Remember that? So
yeah.
So my wife still has bad feelings towards a Tesla.
So that is Sinas Chinum to the Tesla, I guess.
Yeah, right. You can't get over it, even though it was really my son's fault. Like the Tesla didn't do anything wrong. Right? My son just pulled out. The car was clear day, wasn't going very fast, but but she still has bad things towards Teslas. Right? So you see, right? What's the difference? You see, it's the hands of man. So when it's the hands of man, you have resentment. But it's all really the hands of God. So if you don't think it's the hands of God, and you think it's the hands of man, if you don't deal with the person who's driving you nuts now, the next person will drive you nuts.
Oh.
It's the punishment we have. I mean, don't get me wrong. I also people drive me nuts, and I can't deal with it. We're all being pushed by the Almighty to realize that everything is from the hands of God, because that's the healthy way to live. It's
right.
And the Jewish people as a whole live like that. The Israelis, even though the majority of the country was what they call secular, nevertheless, they don't have resentments towards the Arabs. Right? And it's a healthy country because of it. The Arabs, on the other hand, the Palestinians, they're grinding their teeth in total resentment. And they're a miserable bunch of people. They got tremendous resentment. It's not healthy. The Israelis, okay, you want to come shoot us, go ahead, give it a shot.
So Rabbi Baars, are you suggesting then that if somebody is really like toxic or abusive, and you have the opportunity to avoid interacting with them, you shouldn't avoid it, because Hashem is going to continually give you more abusive people until you...
Well, it's a judgment call. Everything's different. Every situation is different. But as best you can, you've got to realize this is me. It's not them. Because if you don't, you're going to the next one's going to drive you crazy. But it's a judgment call. But for sure, you should try your best to not let it get to you, because it's all the hands of God.
So it seems like you're saying then that you should not avoid abusive people, but you should rather say
every situation is different. Some people, I dealt with people like very abusive, and this, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And that would be,
somebody's physically hurting you. Okay, I'm sorry. If somebody's physically hurting you, if they're like literally beating someone physically, then they call the police. Yeah. Okay, but if somebody is not physically beating someone, but they are emotionally neglecting them, and they are intentionally...
There's too many nuances to be able to have a blanket statement. But the point is that it's your resentment of the situation. You still call the police and not have resentment. It's realizing that's the key thing, because if you're holding on to that resentment, and I know people who suffer tremendously at the hands of someone else, and they don't have resentment. I'll leave you with this story. We used to have a teacher. His name was Yossi Gladstein. His son is Daniel Gladstein. He's on Torah Anytime a lot. So he's a lawyer. So he used to speak for us. And every time he would speak, at the end of his speech, he would end with this story. At the end of the Second World War, the Nazis knew the game was up. When we were getting close to the end, they knew that the Allies were going to win. It was just the question whether they're going to be liberated by the Russians or the Americans, the Allies or the Americans. So they knew that they weren't going to get good treatment from the Allies. The Nuremberg trials had already been announced. And so this particular camp, they put everyone on a train going east towards the Russian front. And the Americans caught up with them and stopped the train. And who was heading the platoon was General Patton. Now, Patton had three things going for him. One is he was wickedly smart. Two, he was abhorred by what the Germans did, not because he was pro-Jewish per se. He wasn't anti-Jewish, but he was a military guy. Men fight men in fields. You don't round up women and children. He was particularly abhorred by what the Germans did. And number three was he was a devout Catholic. And so he catches up to this train, and he pulls everybody off the train. So the Germans knew what was going on. So two German officers, they take out their guns and they go to two Jews and they order them to switch uniforms, right? And so they get off, and Patton sees these two emaciated German soldiers and these two very healthy-looking Jewish inmates. So as I said, he was wickedly smart, right? So he pulls out his gun and he gives it to the real Jew. And he says to him, take these people, I'm sure he used very choice words, into the woods and do what you want. Have a good time. Right, Father? And the guy turns to him, Patton, and says to him, the Jew turns to him and said, what these people have done to us is over. There is nothing I can do to them to pay them back for what they have done to me and my people. God will take care of them. I have to move on with my life. And Patton turned to this, and Pat was a devout Catholic, very strong believer. And he turned to this guy, and the Jew, and he said, this is a people that believe in God. And Yossi Gladstein ends the story, that man was my father.
Wow.
So there were people after the Holocaust that never left. Why this happened? I'm angry, blah, blah, blah. You've all met these people, right? You follow? And then there were people, it's as though it never happened. Resentment has nothing to do with the degree of the suffering. I've met people who are mad and bitter that they didn't get a birthday party and blah, blah, it goes on and on and on. And I met a Mengele twin. And you'd never know. He was the nicest guy, no resentment whatsoever. It has nothing to do with what someone has to do with you. It's a lack of bitachon. You have bitachon, your mighty loves you, nothing can hurt you, he's on your side, don't worry. Then what people do, it's their problem. You don't have bitachon, then you trust in human beings, and it's going to hurt. And you're going to have Sinas Chinum. Okay, thank you everybody. It's been a fantastic class. Great comments from everybody. I appreciate it. See you next week. I'll send everyone the recording.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.